Okay, this is orientation lesson 24, lesson 7 in the Healthy Foundations course. I want to talk to you a little bit about sugar and the blood test that it talks about. The time frame in this was shortly after 2003. I think it was 2004 that this blood test took place in our home. In 2003, I'd been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so at that time, a friend of mine introduced me to a nutrition program. I took part in the nutrition program and was able, through just the nutrition, to overcome the multiple sclerosis, and I have no more symptoms, which is interesting and astounding, and I have found that several other people have done the same thing. But what was interesting was that it involved cleaning up my blood. And when the blood test was taken, my blood was clean, and there were very few things in it that you would normally think that there might be, like bacteria and viruses and dead cells and so forth, the normal things. But it looked very clean. The red blood cells were well formed. They had a light in them, which is what they're supposed to have. The macrophages were moving around and gobbling up little bits that they could find. When I ate the sugar, within 60 seconds, the macrophages, which are the white cells, which are your immune system, were paralyzed. Seriously, they just were not moving. And not only that, but the red blood cells had lost some of their light, and they were clumping together. Now, what does that tell you? I remember talking with a gal that I worked with, and she had just had a stroke, and I said, well, what did the doctor tell you to do? And she says, oh, nothing. There's nothing I can do to prevent another stroke. And I said, well, one thing you can do is to avoid excess sugar. Don't have that much sugar. In fact, avoid it altogether if you can. The actual powdered sugar or any other sugar thing, because of what it does to your blood. And I told her about the live blood analysis that I had had. You've got to take that to heart, and what it does to your blood and what it does to your system. And if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have a hard time believing it. I wish I could show it to you, but that was like over 15 years ago. And if you're going to keep your blood clean and you're going to keep your immune system functioning well, you're not going to have your red blood cells clumping up and making your heart work harder, then you need to reduce the amount of what I call manufactured sugar in your diet and avoid it as much as possible. And that is why processed foods are so terrible in some respects, because they do have a lot of sugar. Now, we're not just talking about white cane or beet sugar. We're also talking about brown sugar. We're also talking about agave. We're also talking about honey, and especially high fructose corn syrup. I remember listening to an episode of on television on Oprah a few years ago, where a heart surgeon said one of the number one things to avoid is high fructose corn syrup or corn syrup. It turns solid in your system, and it has much the same effect as the sugar. Plus, it shuts down the brain like now. And if you have high fructose corn syrup, and it's in so many things, avoid it like the plague, please, because it does shut down the brain. And I have seen that in my students, and I have noticed that in myself when I had inadvertently taken some high fructose corn syrup in a drink or in a processed food item. Try to avoid it as much as possible. Let me see if there's something else here I was supposed to. Okay, another thing about the high fructose corn syrup is that most of it comes from GMO corn, which we talked about previously, that could have some glyphosate traces in it, and you just don't want to deal with that. You just want to avoid the glyphosate, the GMO, and so forth. Do look at packages. Teach your kids, or if you're a student, look at packages, look at the ingredients. The fewer ingredients, the better. I love it when a can of corn says corn, water, and salt. You know what's there. And so avoid the high fructose corn syrup as much as you can, and cut down on the sugar as much as you can.